Hi guys, my name is Laura and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking to you about Shakespeare's sonnets and what the hell he is going on about in his first 17 sonnets. Because I just reached sonnet 17, which is a milestone sonnet, and the reason why that is I will be explaining in this video. But before I do that, I thought I would tell you guys a little bit more about myself. Just to give some credibility to what I'm about to tell you guys. Because you might be thinking, why does this woman have any credibility? Why should we believe what she's about to tell us? And the reason is quite simple. I have a master's degree in English literature. I have studied this for many years now. And I am a fan of Shakespeare's work. I quite enjoy reading his sonnets, and yeah, I have a degree in this this kind of thing. So yeah, that's why you should take my word for it. Anyway, moving on. Shakespeare wrote in his lifetime 154 sonnets, which he all published together, followed with another long poem called The Lover's Complaint. And these 154 sonnets were dedicated to a Mr. W.H. Unfortunately, Mr. W.H. identity is unknown. We do not know who this person is. There are strong contenders. There are two people who most academics think it is the W.H. The first one is William Herbert, who was the 3rd Earl of Pembroke, and the other one is Henry Wriothesley, who was the Earl of Southampton. His initials aren't W.H., they are H.W., but it is of course possible that Shakespeare turned them around for the dedication. Unfortunately, we just do not know who W.H. was. We have no idea. So of Shakespeare's 154 sonnets that he wrote in his lifetime, the first 126 are dedicated to a young man, are about a young man, also commonly referred to as the fair youth. So the first 126 are all about a fair youth. Then 127 to 152 are about a dark lady, dedicated to a dark lady or written about a dark lady. And then the last two are about the Greek god of love, Cupid. So the first 126 are all dedicated to a fair youth, and we've read the first 17 now. And these first 17 sonnets are typically classed as the Procreation Sonnets. And they're called the Procreation Sonnets because all 17 of them concern themselves with just one thing. And that is that the fair youth should go out, get married and have children, with the goal that if you have kids, you will immortalize your beauty by passing your beauty on to your children. So Shakespeare obviously thought this was a very important subject because he wrote 17 sonnets on it. So he's really urging the fair youth to make sure his beauty is passed on to future generations by having kids. So I will be talking you guys through the imagery of the 17 sonnets, just briefly touching on the types of imagery all sonnets use. So I will be doing that. So sonnet 1 is a setup sonnet, really. It introduces the idea of procreation and sets up the following sonnets and gives you an idea as a reader what the following sonnets are going to be about. And this sonnet really underlines the fragility and fleetingness of beauty. It really underlines that your beauty will pass away with yourself unless you have kids who will also have your beauty. And it also of course introduces the idea that you should procreate to make sure your beauty does not die with you. Which really is in the first line of Sonnet 1, which says, "From fairest creatures we desire increase," or in common day English, "If you're pretty, please have children, because we want more pretty people in the world." So that's Sonnet 1. Sonnet 2 uses an imagery of aging as warfare. So he really underlines that aging is like waging a war against time and against decay. Sonnet 3, the poet really tries to highlight the fact that you should bless the world and have children, and that the fair youth really should not be afraid that women might reject him, because anyone should be lucky enough and worthy enough to have him as their partner. And really tries to underscore that. Sonnet 4 is uses an image of money lending, because he talks of a usurer, and a usurer was someone who would loan money, and usually you would be urged, of course, to spend your money wisely, and instead Shakespeare's twisted it that you should use your beauty wisely by not using it just on yourself, but have kids. Sonnet 5 and Sonnet 6 are a pair, they go together. They both have the imagery of human life as seasons, which is a common image, that your spring is your youth, your summer is your middle-aged period, and that autumn and winter are your older age and your death. Sonnet 5 and Sonnet 6 follow this imagery, and also uses the idea that your beauty can be distilled and can be preserved for the future. Sonnet 6 also urges the fair youth to have a lot of kids, because he states that 10 children will increase your happiness by 10 times. Sonnet 7 uses an idea of the rising and setting sun as, again, your life period. So the rising sun, of course, being your youth, and the setting sun, of course, being your death and dying. Sonnet 8 uses a music and harmony image, and the poet basically says that in families you have harmony, and if you're young and single you might have harmony, but it's a sad harmony because you don't have music with others. Sonnet 9 asks the fair youth if he is afraid of leaving a widow behind in the world, but counters this by saying that the whole world will be a widow of his death, because there will be if he dies alone, there will be no evidence of his life. There will be no one who has his beauty to remind the world of the fact that he lived. So the whole world would mourn the fair youth's death, and the whole world will be widowed if he doesn't have any children. Sonnet 10 is the first sonnet in which the poet shows a personal interest in the fair youth. It uses the idea of a decaying mansion, and saying that a decaying house will usually you replace the parts, or you make sure the parts are fixed so that the house still stands for future generations. And he shows personal interest in the fair youth because he asks the fair youth that, for the love of me, please make sure you have children and that your beauty lives on. Sonnet 11 has a very similar argument as Sonnet 1, so I'm not going to go much further into that. Sonnet 12 uses the idea that all things will perish along with your beauty. Sonnet 13 uses the idea that you should procreate. Procreate as a defense for death and ruin, because if you have kids, you might die, but your beauty will not, which is a very interesting idea, especially in modern times. Sonnet 14 uses the idea of astronomy and predicting the future, and the poet gives the prediction to the fair youth that unless he has children in the future, his beauty, of course, will die with himself. Sonnet 15 and Sonnet 16 again form a pair. Sonnet 15 really has a image of war against time, that you are throughout your life constantly struggling against time and making time last as long as possible, and that you should have children again. Sonnet 16 also talks of giving yourself away in marriage. And then last but not least, Sonnet 17 again invokes an image of your beauty and having a child that your beauty might live on. But Sonnet 17, interestingly enough, also urges the fair youth to have children, because then if he has children, those children will be proof in the future that the poet's words were not lies. So it grants credibility to the poet's words about the fair youth's beauty. Because the fair youth, also in the following poems, the following sonnets, is really described as this really beautiful person. It's a handsome man. And the poet is concerned that if the fair youth does not have children, that in the future anyone who might read his sonnets will discredit the beauty of the fair youth, but will also discredit the honesty of the poet, because they might believe that there is no such handsome person possible. And any children that the fair youth might have could discredit that idea. So that was a brief explanation of the first 17 sonnets, and the reason they're a milestone is because they are the Procreation Sonnets. And after this, the imagery of urging the fair youth to have children stops. So I will be continuing with reading my sonnets. I will soon also be uploading a video about poetry and perhaps a little bit of a history lesson about English poetry and how it has evolved over time, because I do also know quite a lot about Old English poetry and everything in between from then and Shakespeare. I will be uploading maybe 1 or 2 different poems first, because I thought it might be nice to have a little bit of a break from Shakespeare. So I will be uploading a couple of different poems in the next coming days. I will also be uploading the video about poetry and sonnets and what the rules are of sonnets, because there are rules. And then I will just continue on, because there are still a whole lot of sonnets to get through by Shakespeare. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please make sure that you watch my future videos. Maybe subscribe to my channel if you enjoy these videos. And I'll see you guys again next time. Thank you for watching.